All right, Michael, we're live. We've got 40 people in the room now.
Right. So we're live now, or we're just waiting for people to roll in, Joe?
We're live. You can get started whenever you like.
Oh, okay, great, good. And it looks like Judge Hidalgo is on as well. Hello, Judge, how are you? I think she's on. Well, let's give her a second to confirm she's on, okay?
Sounds good.
Meanwhile, welcome everybody. Good to be with y'all.
It's happy ride your bike anywhere day.
I thought that was every day.
For normal people.
Days like today are a gateway drug.
So I'm the person who's always like, you can say, hey, Maya, do you want to, go see this concert, or do you want to go meet the president, or do you want to go for a bike ride? Yes. Count me in.
So I think it looks like 61 per. Oh, hello, Judge Hidalgo. How are you?
Hello, it's good to see everyone.
Hello, Judge.
Hello.
Well, we'll get started, and thanks everybody for tuning in. My name is Michael Skelly, and I am honored and thrilled to introduce y'all to somebody who needs no introduction, our special guest today, Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo. And we are, as you know, at the 2021 Houston Bike Summit. And by way of sort of quick introduction for Judge Hidalgo, she is somebody who needs no intro, but she's one of the things that I've known her for a number of years now, and helped co-chair her transition team when she was first elected, and also helped out a little bit on the campaign, so got to know her over the years. And what I really appreciate about Judge Hidalgo is she's super curious, super engaged, and willing to really dive into the details. And she has quickly shown a similar, and she's passionate about like countless issues, but one of the issues that she's most passionate about, and she's really leading on, is transportation. And she gets it. She gets that transportation is one of the biggest challenges that we have here in our region and here in Harris County. And Judge Hidalgo has a bunch of initiatives underway that I'm sure she'll talk about. But most importantly, I think she comes at them thinking like, we have to think about the future. We can't think about how we've done things in the past. And in Houston, Texas, in particular, we really have to think about transportation, given how important it is to the economy and to our everyday lives. And I think we're going to hear a lot more from her on that topic. But before we ask Judge Hidalgo to make some opening comments, I'm thrilled to be on the panel with my good friend Maya Ford, and fellow Houston Bike Share member Uh, there she is. She was just giving me a hard time that I had not worn my Houston Bike Share t-shirt. So you're right. Absolutely. Sorry about that. And also want to thank our sponsors for the Houston Bike Summit. And those include Traffic Engineers, the Edo Bike Company, Darrow, and Bike Barn. So give it up for our sponsors, everybody.
Bravo.
And so with that, let me just turn it over to Judge Hidalgo, and we look forward to your thoughts and comments.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's always wonderful to talk to you, Skelly, and you're very good at challenging old ways of thinking that no longer serve us. And I really appreciate that about you, and I appreciate the kind introduction. And I've seen more and more B-cycles around town, including the electric kind, and borrowed some myself. So I know you're behind that. And of course, I know Joe recently joined us from New York City. And I'm guessing it was because you wanted a shorter commute. But look, I'm really happy to be with you guys. I think I've actually been writing more and more recently myself, but really at heart I'm a runner, so I'm used to hearing the sort of on your left from the kind bikers. Some of them just whoosh past, and I'm like, wait a minute. So I like definitely run always on the very, very edge on the right hand side, and I think in some ways that experience is what many of us, whether it's runners or bikers, or just folks who are trying to walk to wherever they need to go, that we experience in this community because there hasn't been that attention necessarily to multimodal transportation. And so, during the pandemic, it's been really wonderful that folks are sort of rediscovering our trails and our bayous and our green spaces. And it's good for the soul, right, to be outside and enjoy the nice weather we've had in particular this year. But it really has brought to the forefront those challenges. If we had designed this county, this city, from the beginning and sort of made a plan for it, I think we can be sure it would have been somewhat different. We would have thought about taking advantage really of our bayous and our channels and having an adequate access to all the trails from all communities, and making sure that there are proper sidewalks and bike lanes that are being built alongside, rather than having to go back and repurpose and buy additional right of way to see where you can fit in the sidewalk and where you can fit in the bike lane, and what are you going to do with the ramps, and of course different kinds of feeder roads that don't encourage speeding but rather are friendly toward pedestrians and bikers, etc. So those are the challenges. But in terms of opportunity, there are some big ones too. We are a region that has all of these potential areas where we can add trails. In many places, the right-of-way is limited, but I think in most places it's not. It is possible to sort of build things out. We've got these beautiful bayous, so much green space that we can build from. We've got growth where we can build in a smarter way, and we're just at a point where folks are recognizing that each of us separately, many of us, were kind of wondering why our community looks the way it does in terms of the lack of access to this kind of multimodal transportation. And now it's sort of become mainstream to ask the question and say, okay, what are we going to do to really change things in a positive direction, building on what we have, and make our region stronger and more competitive going forward? For our part at the county, we're working on it, right? It's a big challenge, and so it's not something that can be changed overnight. But some of what we're working on is a countywide transportation plan to more comprehensively address all kinds of transportation needs. Working also on prioritizing with the funds that we're investing right now, and this is something that we approved last year, perhaps a year ago or so, maybe must have been a bit more actually, because it was before COVID, if I remember correctly, is ensuring that while the county transportation plan comes through, that the transportation funds we're investing go toward schools, go toward improving existing infrastructure, as opposed to building more in the sort of outdated way. And then, coordinating with our jurisdictions on those same principles. And I'm happy to go into more details about that in as we begin our discussion. But look, I'm grateful for the work Bike Houston has been doing. I'm grateful for the fact that you guys are aware of the need for coordination, that you all advocate not just for a cause, but with the city, with the county, with other entities, that you thinking creatively, that you have people on your team that think creatively, that have been there, done that realize it's not easy, but if you put in the work, you're going to get the change. So I'm very excited to join all of you today, and happy to talk about this and other challenges we're facing. But I want to keep it short so we can have a lengthy discussion.
Right. Thank you. You mentioned you're a runner, and I'm sure most runners are future cyclists. Okay, because your knees.
I
may not
resent
last
that
forever.
statement. No, go for it. I have
So one of the things that a lot of us in the room here and on the call love about biking is it's just like such a great way to see the city. So tell us about running in Houston and what you love about running in Houston and why you're a runner or your favorite place to run.
Yeah, there was I ran this year the Houston Marathon was virtual. So we each had to run it, separately and submit our time. And needless to say, it was not my best time. But last year, I think it was last year, the Houston Marathon, at one portion we were running, I guess, and there were all these yard signs, and folks from Bike Barn will know what I'm talking about. Folks who ran the marathon, is these yard signs from Bike Barn that said exactly what you just said, Michael. And I just thought, no, you can run and not hurt your knees. But anyway, I do agree that it's much easier to see the town on a bike, and frankly, that's why I've been biking more and more myself. It's just, you can't match that. It's incredible. As far as running, I love running around, particularly George Bush Park. Terry Hershey is nice as well. With it's got the little hills that are a bit of a challenge. Sometimes I'll run on White Oak Bayou. Of course, Herman Park in those areas. I love sort of trying new places. I've been up at Eisenhower Park up in the Northeast. We've just got an embarrassment of riches when it comes to trails and beautiful areas. And part of what we're doing is consolidating in one place. So when folks want to know where can they go in the county, they can sort of see all of it. That's not available right now. You have to go to each precinct and figure it out. So we're working on that. But even, I have often found myself in the situation where, as I'm trying to get more miles in, right, I can go around the park 5 times, or sort of try to connect between a trail and a park, and then you end up in the situation where the sidewalk ends, or you just, if it were just a little bit closer, you'd be able to find a right piece to connect. So that's the work that we have to do. Around 26% of Harris County residents do not live within a mile of a trail. So there's the challenge. And the good thing is that we understand it. I understand the members of court understand it, because we've been there on foot or on our bike, and we recognize that what needs to change.
Great. Maya, I think you got a question.
Yeah, so I really love this idea, Judge Hidalgo, about thinking for the future. We know in the 21st century that we need a lot of creativity in that thinking. And while I look like I'm only 15, I'm someone's grandmother now. And I have an 18-month-old grandbaby. His name is Emil. And I often think about what safety will look like for him in multimodalism in the next 20 years. What is this work that you are doing? I just heard about, I love this concept of embarrassment of riches. how will we figure out ways to exploit those for our children and our grandchildren for safe practices in the future?
Yeah, first of all, congratulations on your grandbaby. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
First, you have to have a vision. There hasn't been a paradigm shift in terms of how we approach transportation since the 50s. We're working on sort of Eisenhower era idea that you build more and wider freeways. And frankly, until recently, it was almost taboo to tackle that. The sense was, well, Texas is known for its big highways, and that's great. But more and more people are recognizing that it's not just for the people that enjoy biking and running like we do. It's for the people that don't have a car, can't afford one. I've spoken with business leaders of some of the largest businesses, and they've shared with me that there's employees who have to quit because they have no way of getting there. And it's for the people that don't want a car. I've spoken with other business leaders in some of the largest businesses, sometimes the same business leaders that have said, when they're trying to recruit the very highly skilled workers that can afford a car, they don't want a car. They want to live in a walkable city. And if we are not that city, they're going to go somewhere else or not move here from somewhere else. And so part of what we want to do is have a vision. And that's where, our transportation plan is we're going to be reviewing it this coming week at Commissioner's Court. And what it tries to do is take a comprehensive approach. Normally, as you all know, there's a city of Houston and the various cities, 33 smaller cities, and then Harris County has the 4 commissioner precincts. And so generally, each of the precincts has their own thing, their own plan. There's very little coordination. And now the sense is we need somebody to look at the whole thing and help us think about what are the areas that most need an investment. How do we best connect? Now, there's another piece of it, which is just the sheer amount of the investment needs to be there, and we can't do that alone. There was a metro bond that just passed that's important. That'll help with public transit, but it's still not enough when compared to the need that we have. We're working to invest funds from our toll road on smart transportation options, but that by itself also won't cover it. So really we need funding from the federal government, the state government, and that's where we're trying to persuade the state that continuing with an outdated vision of transportation is simply going to set us behind vis-a-vis other regions.
Competitive nature, the competitive nature of what you've been speaking, leveraging assets in neighborhoods to better connect intra-neighborhood, but also to be able to connect outside of each person's neighborhoods for business is a big deal. And on the safety side, are there other elements that you can envision about that? Houston is still peligroso, somewhat dangerous for persons on bikes.
Yeah, very dangerous for persons on bikes, and really dangerous for people in cars too. There's we've got the highest death toll in our roads of any county in the country. And we're large, we're the 3rd largest, but we've got the worst by far. And LA County, Cook County, much bigger than we are. So we have about 600 deaths every year on our roads, which is like 2 planes falling from the sky every year. It's a huge number. And then this doesn't count the folks who are permanently damaged by an accident. Many people, whether it be bikers, whether it be runners, or whether it be the drivers themselves, they end up in these car accidents and are paralyzed. Their brains are permanently damaged. I mean, it's a horrendous thing. And I saw it firsthand when I used to work in our hospitals. So it's really tragic. And that's another reason to change this frame that, the competitiveness, the safety. And of course, you also have to remember, these wider highways don't actually alleviate traffic. But yeah, so what we're doing at the county is our funds that, there's a transportation plan coming, which is going to guide our investments going forward. But for the past couple of years that we've been in office, a year and change that we've been working on this, is saying one of the key, since we're still figuring out the smart way to allocate the funds, we don't want to perpetuate a broken system. So what are the things that we know are going to make a positive difference? One of them is safety around schools, around school zones. And so we have a Safe Routes to School program, which is, the bulk of our funds go to that. The other bulk goes to making sure that all of our infrastructure is as per industry standard, a score of B or better than that, could be a B or better program. But so the schools one is about safety within a certain perimeter of schools, because that's another one, we hear from communities all the time where the kids are, just to be able to walk to their school, they have to walk on the side of the road. There's no sidewalk. So we're thinking about it in that perspective, and then in our advocacy with the state, with the federal government, saying, as we hopefully are able to make an investment in multimodal transportation and transit alternatives to wider highways, remember it's also about safety and environment. Forgot to touch about that, environment, pollution, all of that.
Right.
Right. Got a bunch of stuff coming in on the chat. And maybe I'll try to tie these together a little bit. One of the questions is, what can the county do to encourage density? So I know y'all are doing a lot of work in terms of concentrating county services downtown. But there's other things happening. What can corporate partners do to encourage different types of transportation? And then perhaps related to that, north-south connections, and how is the county thinking about those connections, which you yourself just mentioned as you're going from sort of bayou to bayou. It's the bayous run east-west, and we need more north-south. So a whole bunch of questions sort of wrapped together there for you.
Yeah, the first question is very important, is and in theory, when you're trying to develop a walkable city, a walkable community, denser is better is the way to do it. And so I definitely fall on the side of let's be smart in the way we grow. And that's been part of the input that I've given to the development of this transportation plan. And not just from the standpoint of a walkable community, but also from the standpoint of flooding and sprawl. And so that's not, I'm not going to say that's something that is sort of enshrined in county strategy right now, but I know that at least some of my colleagues on Commissioner's Court share that vision. And I'm hoping that the transportation plan will sort of set that line for us to say, as we grow, let's add some weight on the side of this kind of smart growth that is promoting this kind of density that is smart. Tangentially related, we've also adopted the most stringent detention requirements we can under the law, so that as we build in Harris County, we have to reserve as much space, sort of detention basins, reserve the water that would be displaced by that construction. And we've come up with ways to get the city of Houston and other cities to adopt the same requirements. You mentioned the north-south connections. So our bayous run, east-west, and it's great. And we have a lot of work going to work on improve the trails along our bayous and all the huge detention basins we're building right now with the flood control projects. But the question is then, how do you create that grid? How do you go north-south? And so there, what we've done is we've reached an agreement with Centerpoint, and the city of Houston has a similar agreement to be able to use Centerpoint's right of way. And the deal is we their concern is sort of legal liability. And so we'll say, okay, we'll assume that, but you let us use your right of way so we can build trails north-south along the Centerpoint rights of way. And they've got a lot of land, and so that'll help us complete this sort of grid. So I hope that answers the questions, Michael.
Yeah, I think yes, yeah. In fact, you're answering some of the questions in the chat before we can even get to them. So
good.
One of the other sort of themes that pops up in all these discussions, and we think about it at Houston Bike Share, and I know Bike Houston thinks about it, Link's thinking about, like, how do we make sure that the Parks Board thinks about this all the time, that we come up with equitable solutions. And this sort of goes with this sort of notion of an opportunity city. So as you think about this new type of infrastructure, how do we make sure that its benefits extend to everybody?
Yeah, and I just remembered that there was a question about what could the corporate community do, and one of the things I think of, on the one hand, for the communities that don't have the businesses that are sort of far out and are losing employees who don't have a car. Part of what we've done is partner with them to say, charter buses or something. They're working with the precincts to work on that, but it's an imperfect and short-term solution. But one thing businesses can do is really advocate with the legislature and with state leaders. I know it's not ideal. It is what it is, that the folks that they're really listened to are not so much the constituents, but in many times, but in particular the funders, the donors. And so folks, business leaders that have that outsized influence, to say, hey, we need a new vision, a modern vision. Not even modern. I mean, we're behind the times. We're not trying to even get ahead of the times. We're just trying to get to the 20th century in terms of comparing with global cities as far as our transportation infrastructure. So that's important. As far as equitable distribution of this, you have to have a very specific paradigm. It's a similar thing we went through with flood control. Is you can say there's going to be an equitable distribution of funds, but how are you defining equitable? And so what we did is we came up with a formula that included, how many people are going to be benefited by the project, how vulnerable is that community, how many people flood at which level of 100-year, 500-year flood, what are the positive environmental impacts of the project, and what is the social vulnerability index of that region. So regions where there's they can't just pick up and move to their second home. They have higher social vulnerability scores, and it's a score that's assigned to each census tract by the CDC. And so what we are working on the transportation side is something similar, to say, what kind of framework can we develop to have, an imperfect but much better than nothing, and sort of objective system of evaluating where really is the need. And it's very interesting, the commissioners, each have their precincts, and so they all are advocating for their precincts. So for example, Commissioner Ellis's precinct 1, his point is there's just so much need in the core of the city. And of course, the city has a revenue cap. We now have one too that's state imposed, and there's just such a need for investment. Commissioners Cagle and Ramsey, who are in the areas that are growing the fastest in the north and northwest, their point is, well, we have the fastest growth, so we need the most funding. And then Commissioner Garcia is out east, southeast, and his point is, we have so much industry, the roads are in worse shape because you've got these big trucks driving through them. So, how do you equate all of that? And that's what, we've been working on, and we're just in the cusp of developing, like, okay, let's come up with some sort of paradigm so that it's not just split it 4 ways, or, whoever's come up with some sort of backroom agreement or something like that.
Fantastic. Thank you. And biking is a bipartisan activity. So it is one of these issues that state, to the point about like who controls the legislature and so on, there's tons of Republican bikers. And so we'll all keep working all the different angles to make sure all this happens. Judge, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us this afternoon, and for all the great work that you're doing. And we'll see you out there on the trails.
All right, sounds good. Thank you guys so much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Judge.
And Michael, if we're still going, can we pass it over to Greg Hambrick?
Greg, you're up, man. You've been hanging in the background there. We're counting on you to come on camera. There you are.
Hey, thank you, Michael. Good to see you again. Thanks for leading the discussion. Everybody, I'm Greg Hambrick. I'm with Bike Houston. I'm on the board. My job today really is to promote Bike Houston just a little bit. But before I do that, I want to just say, as an active cyclist and a board member of Bike Houston, I really echo Judge Hidalgo's vision for a multimodal city where we can all get around safely and easily without needing to own a car. Her vision's right in line with Bike Houston's. That is, we all want to be in a city where we can make transformable investments in public transit, walking and bicycling infrastructure, And we really do need to get out of this vicious cycle we're in, where we're trying to build our way out of congestion with more car infrastructure. So our mission at Bike Houston is all about bringing urgency to the idea that anyone, no matter who they are or where they live, whether you're a spandex cyclist like me, or someone who depends upon a bicycle for primary source of transportation, we can all easily get around and safely get around Houston by bike. So I want to say that again, because it's important. We all want to get around Houston safely and easily, no matter who we are, where we live, or what we do for a living. So that's our goal. So, and we want you to join us. So we need your membership, and our membership model this year has changed. And so we've really kind of made it a lower bar. So basically you can join Bike Houston for a fee that basically exhibits your value of Bike Houston to you. So you can get online today at bikehouston.org, and you can become a member and pay whatever it's worth to you. And we hope that since you've enjoyed this summit today, that you'll reflect your membership fee that you decide to pay to be a member with us. So the last thing I'd like to do is tell you that this is Bike Month, and during Bike Month, one of our dedicated supporters, Mark Livingston, is going to match every dollar you give to Bike Houston. So no amount's too small, and anything you give will go double the distance. So we would love for you to go to bikehouston.org/donate and make a donation, or bikehouston.org/join to become a member, because numbers matter in our business. Our voices are louder when there are more of us. So I'd really appreciate if you do that today. And thank you very much for your time.
All right, Joe, over to you.
All right, I think we're clear. Thanks everyone for joining.
Be safe on your bikes, have fun, get pumped up. Great bike summit.
Thank you, Joe. Let me just, before people check out, I want to thank Joe and Shannon for moving to Houston and taking a chance on biking in this. It can feel like an unlikely biking city from afar, but I know that now that you're here, you realize that we got a lot of cool stuff going, and we have a ton of potential and a lot of great work to do. So thank you, Joe, for coming down. Thank you, Shannon, for coming down here with Joe, and thank the boys for the really nice temperate weather that the whole family is going to get to experience over the next few months.
That's what we hear.
On bikes, it's okay. It all works out.